Okay, thanks for joining us again. Next up, from BHP Nickel West, we have Eddie Hagel, Asset President. Eddie was appointed to the role of Nickel West Asset President March 2015 with a mandate to execute a business turnaround of the asset. Nickel West's subsequent transformation has led to the creation of a very lean, high-performance, innovative culture focused on value creation. Eddie's held a number of senior roles in the commercial, technical and operational areas at BHP over the last 30 years across 4 commodities. First-class honours degree in mining engineering, MBA from Harvard. Please join me in welcoming Eddie Hagel.
Thank you, Digby, for your introduction, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Eddie Hagel, and it is a great pleasure to be here with you again for another year at Diggers and Dealers. This is a great forum for our world-class West Australian resources industry to come together and present our future plans and opportunities to our communities, investors, and our ability to support economic recovery, not only in Australia, but in those economies that require our resources to build their own future. In the goldfields, BHP is the largest nickel producer. We're also the largest employer. We play an essential part in the community, and it is a responsibility we take very seriously. During the coronavirus pandemic, we invested over $500,000 through our Vital Resources Fund to community groups right here in the goldfields, support to local businesses, mental health and Aboriginal healthcare groups. Today I'll be speaking about how we are working to become a more sustainable nickel business and part of the goldfields' successful future. By sustainable, of course, I do mean a focus on sustainability and climate change, with our recent commitment to reduce operational greenhouse gases by 30% by 2030. But I also want to explain how we are building a sustainable asset with the right resources, the right technology and the right market strategy to be future fit and deliver returns to BHP shareholders well into the future. Before I do this is our usual disclaimer slide, which relates to any forward-looking statements. You'll see footnotes throughout the presentation. These are all included at the back of the pack, along with the mineral resources and ore reserve statements. This presentation will be shortly available on our website if you would like to take a closer look. BHP has a consistent strategy to own and operate the best assets in the best commodities, underpinned by reliable, safe delivery of leading operational performance with options to grow value and deliver high returns. BHP is poised to benefit from the unfolding electric vehicle and stationary battery storage revolution. My role is to position Nickel West for this future world. We hold one of the 3 leading nickel positions in the world, with estimated mineral resources at 6.2 million tonnes of nickel in ore, and that is without Honeymoon Well. I'll come back to this recent acquisition later. Our exploration continues across the Agnew-Wiluna Belt and Seahorse, and we continue to look to acquire prospective nickel tenements. We are confident in the scale of the future opportunity. In parallel, we continue to invest in our existing Nickel West asset. We are transforming from a 50-year-old stainless steel supplier into one of the world's leading nickel suppliers to the battery sector. We are a future-facing commodity in the right jurisdiction here in Western Australia, with products that will help accelerate the decarbonisation of transportation and, in time, electricity generation, with significant sustainability credentials already and a high-performing culture. And we want to be bigger. Elon Musk's recent call to nickel producers is a welcome reminder that there is a huge demand coming for battery-grade products. Our ambition is to develop the investment case to materially grow Nickel West and reduce our underlying costs. We're executing on these plans as we speak by increasing our nickel reserves, completing our resource transition to new mines, starting to prepare for future technologies, and beginning the commissioning of the nickel sulphate plant at Kwinana. This is an interesting slide. What it highlights is that the greater the global effort to decarbonise, the stronger the positive impact is on the demand for nickel. In our central energy view, we expect to see that the cumulative demand over the next 30 years is 250% of that of the past 30 years. And should the global response accelerate and warming be kept to 1.5 degrees centigrade, then nickel again outperforms with a cumulative demand reaching 350%. Nickel is a standout winner from a decarbonising world. It secures this position because no matter what metals or combination of metals are tested in lithium-ion battery cathodes, nickel produces the highest energy density of any. This is a powerful insight for why nickel has such a positive future. It is the workhorse for the lithium-ion battery, making car and later truck electrification possible. Not surprisingly, we expect nickel in battery demand to surge from around the mid to late 2020s. You've heard me say this before. We are at the beginning of a revolution that will transform our world and materially increase demand for nickel. It will, however, not just be any nickel. There is presently 2.4 million tonnes of nickel produced annually, and around 1.4 million tonnes of that is NPI and ferronickel, or Class 2 nickel. This will not be converted to battery grade on the basis of the conversion cost. Of the Class 1 nickel, 630,000 tonnes or so is cathode nickel, which cannot be readily dissolved to form nickel sulfate. So the growth that we speak to will come from either nickel powder producers like BHP Nickel West, which is already the world's largest powder producer, or from cathode producers adjusting their flow sheets to produce powder or liquid sulfate, or from an expansion of HPAL, most likely in Indonesia, with its incumbent challenges. This will require significant investment, and we expect it will induce pricing for Class 1 nickel later in this decade or early in the 2030s. At Tesla's recent Battery Day, Elon Musk flagged the enormous demand that will come for nickel as this decade unfolds. His call for nickel miners to grow, and to grow quickly, offers real evidence of the place that nickel has as a strategic battery metal going forward. A few years ago, we were introduced to the Tesla Gigafactory, a 30 gigawatt hour battery plant. Now the conversation at Tesla is on the urgency of reaching terawatt hours of production. Nickel West is well positioned to benefit from this anticipated demand growth. Last year, we sold around 70% of our nickel metal to battery manufacturers around the world, making BHP one of the world's leading battery metal suppliers. Our customers and future customers are increasing the demand for clean nickel products and clean supply chains. So having the best assets also means addressing our Scope 1 and 2 emissions. Vehicle supply chains need to address carbon footprints, SO2 emissions, water stewardship, and social licence. Nickel West has a global advantage in the sustainable production of nickel. Our integrated value chain and the sulfide nature of our nickel deposits makes us one of the world's lowest carbon emitters, as sulphur emissions are low and our water withdrawal is one of the best practices globally in the nickel industry. And all of our products come from within Western Australia with high accountability and obviously an excellent human rights record. Sustainable nickel production is essential to meet future demand. And we are well positioned, and we are committed to further improving the sustainability of our business. We are committed to a 30% reduction in carbon emissions from 2020 levels by 2030. And we intend to begin these changes with the following, some of which are planned or well underway. By securing renewable power contracts for our operations connected to the Swiss, some of which we've already secured. By installing new steam generators at the smelter and installing 18 megawatts of solar installations at our northern operations, split between Mount Keith and Leinster, and the installation of a 9 megawatt hour battery energy storage system at Leinster. Accepting that the world will want our nickel and we are well placed to provide it with one of the lowest carbon footprints is an exciting prospect for us. At this point, I'd like to shift focus and show you the results of our efforts to rebuild our reserve base. We've delivered a 90% increase in our estimated nickel reserves over the past 3 years. 2017 was the turning of the tide for Nickel West, and 2019 and 20 have built further upon this, taking reserves for the asset to 1.74 million tonnes, again excluding Honeymoon Well. We've successfully identified a number of new development opportunities during this time, demonstrated their economic attractiveness, secured funding and regulatory approvals, and then executed to provide continuity of ore to our concentrators. Honeymoon Well is one of the first of our no-regret investments that we have started making to create scale and realise Nickel West's full potential. Honeymoon Well significantly enhances our position in one of the world's major nickel sulphide provinces. Several deposits are already under consideration, with the Wedgetail deposit likely to be the first to be developed. There are also several disseminated sulphide deposits in the style of the Mount Keith and Yakabindi ore types being considered, including Corella, Hannibals and Harrier. Additionally, we acquired the remaining 50% share in Albion Downs joint venture, giving us 100% ownership and providing us with exploration access to these tenements. We'll provide updates on reserves and resources for Honeymoon Well in due course. This is a busy slide, but it tells an interesting story. For many years, our geologists have speculated that the Perseverance ore body continued at depth, but could potentially turn to run horizontally and perhaps even become shallower as it approached Venus, about 2 kilometres away. The team has extended this hypothesis that the channel may extend all the way back to Curiosity now, 3.5 kilometres from Perseverance. In 2012, there were 3 holes out of 4 drilled from surface that did intersect mineralisation, giving some support to this idea. The 2019 campaign results also supported this theory. For some years, I've indicated that the Venus access drives would in time provide a cost-effective drill position to make new discoveries and define more resources at depth. But we were constrained by air, needing to focus our drilling on the highest priority areas, which inevitably meant that Venus grade control drilling was first choice. In May this year, we commissioned our 700-metre ventilation shaft, which deconstrained drilling. And this has allowed us to return to the task of determining where the channel goes, and we're seeing some really interesting things. We target our drilling further north, and logging on drill hole 25 shows heavily sulphide disseminated intervals, confirming the channel approximately 500 metres north of the 2019 drill holes. This cross-section from the middle of the channel shows the local geological interpretation from our earlier campaigns. We'll continue to step out in 300 to 500 metre stages towards Venus and test the presence of nickel. We've now officially moved from hypothesis to interpretation. Our resource transition is in full swing at Nickel West, with both Yakabindi and Venus at full production rates. At Yakabindi, there are 2 pits in scope, 6 Mile Well and Goliath. We begin mining operations at 6 Mile Well and have already developed the pit to 150 metres deep. It achieved full production in less than 5 months. Mining operations will soon commence at Goliath. The transition of the resource at Mount Keith is now complete, securing the future of feed to that concentrator. And at Venus Underground Mine, the insourcing of operations was successfully completed in July 2019, and the ramp-up achieved the planned 600,000 tonnes per year during last financial year. Venus is a large ore body and a higher grade one to many of our others, so it's a good feed to our mill. Production has also started now at Leinster B11, with the undercut just starting a couple of weeks ago. This is BHP's first developed block cave, a baby block cave as we call it, and an important part of the future of mining generally, as large open cut mines become too deep to be economic. For those not familiar with block caving, it's a mining system which involves mining an ore body underground and allowing it to collapse under its own weight, a process that opens access to mine deeper and also lower grade deposits. It works with the creation of an undercut across the full ore body size, which induces the ore body to naturally fragment and cave under gravity. Below this undercut, drawbells are excavated to funnel the fragmented cave ore to the draw points for removal. Leinster B11 will account for 30% of nickel production into the Leinster concentrator for the next 8 years, so it's an important focus area for us at this time. It was great to see Dave's presentation from Mincor in yesterday's session. We and the team at Mincor he and the team at Mincor have done an amazing job with their ambition to return to production, and we're pleased to play a part in their restart. Nickel West and Mincor have already finalised and agreed an ore tolling and concentrate purchase agreement, and we have that in place. Its triggering to occur closer to when they commence deliveries will initiate our preparations to bring the Kambalda concentrator back online. Although the concentrator has been in care and maintenance since July 18, the dryer has continued to operate, processing concentrates from other third-party suppliers. Our smelter was designed in the late 1960s and was commissioned in 1972. For those historic aficionados, it was Gough Whitlam came to the opening. And it was designed to process high-grade Kambalda concentrate, which presented to the smelter a 9 MgO ratio of around 12. The flash furnace technology that was chosen made it the first flash furnace in Australia, and today remains one of only 2 flash furnaces globally with an integrated electric end. The other is at Jinchuan. With our support, they sent technical and project team members here to Kalgoorlie to learn as much as possible from our people on how to operate their new build. Since 1972, however, the average iron MgO of the feed to the smelter has continued to decline as the resources have moved to different ore bodies, and in particular, as Mount Keith increasingly took a share of its feed. So what's important about iron MgO? Iron MgO is important because it maintains the fluidity in the furnace bath. Too low and the bath freezes, it stops working. And given that the majority of the Nickel West resource base surrounds Mount Keith, it's become worth considering alternative smelting technologies as we prepare for the next furnace rebuild currently planned for July 25. While we may choose to replace like-for-like technology, we're also looking at 2 alternative options. The first is replicating work that Jinchuan subsequently did to their furnace in converting it from a straight flash furnace to a high temperature integrated flash furnace. This retains much of the existing infrastructure, but allows the furnace to run 50 degrees hotter and therefore makes it able to deal with lower iron MgO material. And allows the minimum target to reduce from 5.3 to 4.7. And if you add an electric furnace to the back end of that, as Jinchuan already have done, you can reduce it further to 4.2. The second is to replace the flash furnace completely with a Don flash, coupled with an electric furnace, which would mean a modified flow sheet, but would still fit into the furnace building as we currently have. The Don furnace is unique because it completes the primary smelting and converting steps in a single action, producing a high-grade matte ready for refining at the Kwinana refinery. Slag would require cleaning in a separate electric furnace, but then would also be able to take directly Mount Keith concentrate, as low as an iron MgO of 1.3. So together, what it would allow us to do is reduce the iron MgO to about 3, a significant reduction. Either of these options could potentially replace HPOX, high-pressure oxidative leach that I discussed last year, because many of the same feed inputs are able to be processed through this pyrometallurgical solution. It's important to note that the selection of our future smelting pathway will have important implications for the growth of Mount Keith. The lower the iron MgO, the more Mount Keith concentrate we can process, unlocking future growth options for Nickel West. Nickel West is already a very sustainable producer relative to our peers. Nevertheless, we want to continue to improve. And one part of our Kalgoorlie plan is to eliminate nearly 100% of SO2 emissions. Presently, a very small percentage of SO2 emissions are released into the air, with the majority being able to be converted to sulfuric acid in our acid plant out at the smelter. It is our plan to upgrade the acid plant at the smelter to capture virtually all of the sulphur dioxide air emissions generated from the furnace and converter operations. This will require a series of investments which we are aiming to complete by 2024, ahead of the furnace rebuild. The program is already underway. Eliminating SO2 emissions is a pathway for us to deliver a more sustainable, responsibly sourced product, reducing our carbon footprint and lowering our environmental impact to the surrounding area here. Last year was an important transition year. The 2020 major shutdowns at Kalgoorlie and Kwinana were important opportunities to catch up on the maintenance on these facilities. We invested heavily, and where we found emergent issues, we stopped and we repaired them, setting ourselves up for a more stable future. We continued to transition our production towards metal and soon nickel sulphate, with 85% of all production coming from the debottlenecked Kwinana refinery. The refinery was approved last year to produce 82,500 tonnes per annum, and very pleasingly, we have just received works approval to ramp up to 90,000 tonnes per annum. These approvals are for the production of powder and briquettes and for the conversion of 22,000 tonnes of powder to nickel sulphate. And finally, in May this year, we completed all of the major structural works at the nickel sulphate plant. The main commissioning effort, which is stage 2 pre-commissioning through to stage 3 ward commissioning, has now started. Stage 4 process commissioning, that's when we put liquor on, is due to commence in early 2021. And we therefore expect first crystals in the second half of this financial year, the first half of next calendar year. And I have a short video from a couple of our team members on the ground, Ben and Tiaz, to show you the enormous work that's been done so far, which hopefully will work.
We're standing here at the new nickel sulphate plant at Kwinana Refinery. Stage 1 will produce 100 kilotons per annum of nickel sulphate.
We've now completed all of our structural and mechanical components and are well and truly into our stage 2 commissioning of the electrical works. So nickel sulphate plant, it takes nickel powder from our Kwinana nickel refinery and dissolves it in sulfuric acid from our Kalgoorlie smelter before processing it through the crystalliser.
The process is nearly fully automated and we'll be using nickel powder to create nickel sulphate, which will be used in batteries for electric cars. So
we've been collaborating with a lot of our local partners here down at Kwinana. Quite a lot of our steelwork has been fabricated and assembled at the AMC in Henderson.
We've already installed 690 tonnes of steel, 73 kilometres of cable and 10 kilometres of piping. It's really exciting to be a part of this nickel sulphate project as we enter into the battery industry.
While we have experienced delays in the project, we have used this time productively. We've been able to identify 2 key pathways that will in time increase the capacity of our installed infrastructure. The first simply involved changing some of the processes we have at the refinery to produce a finer powder. The finer the powder, the faster it dissolves. The second was the addition of small quantities of hydrogen peroxide, which has the effect of stopping surface oxidation and allows the process to continue unabated. And together, they offer the opportunity for the nickel sulphate plant to potentially achieve a much higher production rate than we currently plan. We create value by increasing volume or by increasing margins. And we're planning to do both. We believe in the market. We have the sustainability credentials. We have a large, long life, low cost resource base, and we're innovating and transforming our asset. We've increased our nickel reserves in a big way, completed our resource transition to new mines, started putting in future technologies and reviewing and exploring new future technologies at the smelter, and we are continuing our journey downstream, where we see high returns. We are already one of the world's leading Class 1 nickel producers, and we're right here in WA. We're building a sustainable asset with the right resources, the right technology, and importantly, the right market strategy to deliver returns to BHP shareholders well into the future. Thank you for the opportunity to share our vision and what we hope to be very substantial plans. I'll be happy to take any questions now.
Eddie, I'll ask a nice easy one. Given the 200% and 300% demand equations that you spoke about on a long-term basis, what are the nickel price outcomes under those scenarios?
Thanks, Stevie. So it probably comes as no great surprise that our internal price protocols are top secret and not to be shared, but I know you guys will keep a secret. But I'd defer, I think, to some of the more publicly available information, and those prices range from high teens all the way up to 30. It's quite a wide range of views at the present time, but I think you could appreciate that they're ultimately going to be higher than they are now.
Please join me in thanking Eddie Hagel.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.